Hello, everybody. My name is Bart Feller. I'm the principal flute of the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, and it is my pleasure to be able to have for a few minutes of chat French hornist and composer Jeff Scott. Jeff, welcome to our interview. I'm so glad you could be here for this.
Well, Bart, thank you for having me, and specifically thank you for having interest in my music and using it in this platform.
Absolutely. I'm very, very excited about your piece. Let's talk about that in just 1 minute. Maybe you could start off by telling us the Jeff Scott story. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Were you a composer first or a French hornist first? Maybe you could just lay it out for us.
Sure, no worries, and thank you. I was born in Queens, New York. In Far Rockaway, Queens is where I was really raised. I started playing horn as kind of a way to find something to do on Saturdays, to be really honest. It was the 80s, and things were pretty rough in Far Rockaway, Queens in those days. And I was playing ball, which was really my number one thing. I wanted to play for the New York Yankees like nobody's business. I wanted to be Reggie Jackson. That was top before anything else. But my mom also wanted me to get a little culture. So came an opportunity to do some Saturday programming at Brooklyn College. They had a Saturday program, much like the Juilliard Prep or Manhattan School Prep. I started really sort of honing in on French horn there, learning theory and so forth. Right around the age 14. But to be really honest, I didn't get serious about it until I got to high school. When I got in high school, there was a really good program it was Beach Channel High School. There was a really good program with a great band director. And he and my private teacher encouraged me to go up and do New York Youth Symphony, All City Orchestra, that sort of thing. And then that was really the big thing, because it got me out of Queens in Far Rockaway, where I was the hotshot French horn that didn't have to practice because, nobody else could play around me. Right. And I actually was around kids that really practiced, that really sounded good. Right. It was like, oh, okay, that's what you're supposed to sound like.
It's a big moment when you change your pond and all of a sudden you're not a big fish anymore, isn't it?
Big time. And it didn't take much. Just take the train into the city. But it was a great thing. And I'll never, ever forget the biggest influence, and this goes to a lot of probably what we might cover, or at the very least, part of the big project that you're a part of, influence. I in one of my very first rehearsals for the New York Youth Symphony, the conductor says a really interesting thing to me that I didn't know who the person was. He said, that is a beautiful sound you made on that solo. He says, if you work really, really hard, you might just sound like Jerome Ashby one day. And I had no idea who Jerome Ashby was, and there was no Googling back in 80, whatever it was.
Now, go ahead and tell our listeners who Jerome Ashby is so they know exactly what we know.
Yeah, Jerome Ashby was the associate principal French horn in the New York Philharmonic for many, many years through the 70s and 80s and 90s, and unfortunately passed away because of cancer some years ago. And I was fortunate to have him as a teacher later. And just a quick extra side story to that. So there was a side-by-side concert with the New York Youth Symphony the following year and the New York Philharmonic. And principals got to sit next to the principal of horn of the Philharmonic. So I sat next to Jerome Ashby.
Wow.
And so I finally got to meet this famous horn player, and I was like 16, and I still didn't know anything. And they're playing Oberon.
Wow. And
he sits, I'm looking across his shoulder at the music, and he's looking at me and says, hey, do you know this music? I said, no, I have no idea. He says, yeah, you're never going to forget it. And the best part was the conductor, I forget, it was one of the assistant conductors of the New York Philharmonic. All he did was gesture to him. He didn't conduct him. He just sort of said, you may begin, that sort of thing. And he started with this sound, right. From pianissimo to mezzo piano, back down to triple P.
Wow.
It bled into the strings. And I'd never heard anything.
Right.
I really thought I was a horn player, but that shit, it changed my life.
So the mind was officially blown.
Well, could not understand what I was experiencing, but I wanted to sound like that.
Wow.
Yep.
What an amazing moment he gave you.
Oh, forget it. I think, he said, when you're in college, he says, look me up, and I did. I did.
So you went to college, music conservatory as a French horn major?
Yeah, my first studies was at Manhattan School of Music. Studied with David Jolly, the great David Jolly. Went to master's study at SUNY Stony Brook. Studied with Bill Purvis. And then attended a doctoral program in the City University of New York. Really, I was avoiding paying back student loans. And as long as I was getting like scholarship to go to school, I was like, I'm going to hide out till I find some work. I didn't finish the program, but I ended up studying with Scott Brubaker at the Met, and then the late Jerome Ashby for a year. So I really had no excuse. It's like, you're either going to sound good with those guys or you were terrible.
So it was all on you.
It was all on me.
They had the instruction part down, but you had to produce.
You got that.
All right, so where did Jeff Scott, the composer, emerge from?
It started from interest in orchestrating. When I was at Stony Brook, we used to do these after-concert jam sessions. Musicians from the orchestra would get together and just play pop music, like Earth, Wind, and Fire in like the rec room, and have sneak beers into the campus and have little parties. And I used to do the arrangements, and I got really interested in like just how it worked. So I took this orchestration class that a theory and a guy named Jacques Lassard, he passed away. But it really sparked my interest because what he would do is he'd have you take like Mozart piano sonatas and re-orchestrate them, or orchestrate them, I should say, for, chamber orchestra, or do the reverse, take an orchestral piece and condense it into a sonata.
Scale it down. Nice. Very nice.
Man, and I tell you, it kicked my booty, but it was the best training to really hone and get to know the instruments, transposition, the different ranges of everything, and then really just get the wheels.
Sure.
Turning,
Excellent. So, okay, so now we're fast forwarding. You have the bachelor's, the master's, you started on the next degree, and then did the Imani Winds come into your life right around then?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. I was doing sort of the New York freelance thing. Yeah. I was really fortunate. I had great teachers and I had built a little bit of a network of friends who were getting me into things.
Yep. And
one of my dearest friends from Manhattan School of Music, horn player brother, you would know Katie Dennis.
I do. I absolutely do.
Yeah. She got me my first show back in 1994, I think it was. It was a revival of Showboat. And it was purely like the conductor asked, it was two horns, and he asked her who she'd like to play horn with in the section. And, in those days, and it might still be sort of kind of like this now, but it was really who you knew in the business. And she says, call Jeff Scott, and it was purely our relationship in school. She enjoyed playing with me, and she knew that I was dependable and that sort of thing.
Wasn't that the revival with Elaine Stritch? Wasn't it that one?
It was. Yes, it was.
A lot of my New Jersey colleagues are very busy on Broadway, and they know you from there. People like Sarah Seaver on the cello, Jim Sow on the violin, David Blinn on the viola, Kathleen Nestor on the flute. So a lot of my symphony peeps know you from your Broadway life.
Absolutely. And that really was my foundation in New York, because I went from Showboat immediately to The Lion King. And Lion King opened in 97, and then that same fall, Imani Wind started as a rehearsal ensemble.
Wow.
And the best part for me was that I had the support of being gainfully employed with the Lion King, so I was able to afford the time and energy to put into rehearsing with a group that wasn't really doing anything at the time, you know. Right. While the girls in the group were hungry to get something going, I actually could afford to, you know, spend, you know, 4 or 5 hours during the day rehearsing with them, and then go play a show at night.
You had this wonderful cushion, didn't you?
Exactly, but they then had to like figure out where the money was going to come from. So it was like a weird dichotomy because I was a little older than them, and I would come into it like, yeah, sure, let's rehearse, yeah. But then when they got serious about really, really wanting to do it, like do competitions and, you know, and do like take any gig that gets offered, that sort of thing.
Right.
And I sort of scratch my head. Wait a second. You want me to take off 3 shows to go to Maine and play like, you know, 3 kiddie concerts? I don't know about this. Right. But it came down to a decision in 2005. I had, if you've ever done Broadway, you know you have a minimum that you have to.
You must meet your minimum, of course.
It was May of 2005, and my year to date said something like $800.
Wow.
That's how much touring we were doing.
Right.
And, I was actually walking into the office to ask for yet another leave, and the MD said, listen, we love you here, but there are people that would kill to have this chair.
Right.
And you do everybody a lot of goodwill. If you made a decision, are you going to be in the chair, or are you going to be in Imani Wind?
Yep.
That was a tough one. That was a real tough decision because that really, I mean, the group was doing it was doing well, but it was not doing as well as a Broadway show. And I had to really think about what I wanted in life musically. And I have to say, as much as I loved my colleagues that I worked with on Broadway, and I loved the cushion that it provided financially, I just wasn't being challenged musically. So at the end of the day, it was not a difficult decision to leave the show.
And then Imani full-time from 2005, and the group has just skyrocketed. I would call you the premier woodwind quintet in the country, if not even more than that. I mean,
I don't think there's another other full-time wind quintet in the United States. You know, that makes it's living purely off of touring. We're extremely fortunate. We have been, of course, we put in loads of effort, time, sweat, tears, but yeah, every year we got a little better, and it opened up more and more doors along the way, collaborations, you know, great stages. And the thing really about when it comes to composition was that, you know, and Bart, I know you've played in plenty of wind quintets. There's like 10, 12.
It's a little light, isn't it?
A little light.
It's not exactly the string quartet repertoire, is it?
No. Then there's like 20 pieces that you could play if you're really like, all right, well, we should do them because they're part of the lexicon, you know. And then the rest is like, oh, goodness. So, and also the music really, you know, after a while, it just didn't speak to the soul of the group.
Yep.
And so myself and the original flute player in the group, Valerie Coleman, we decided we'd set about not only composing but arranging whatever it took, really, to expand the repertoire. And that also meant commissioning and all kinds of things.
And what a long-term contribution you've made to the woodwind quintet genre through that. I mean, that's something that's gonna outlast any particular group and just become part of the new repertoire.
That, and I have to say, is one of the proudest things. Is it was difficult to do in terms of raising money to get commissions. Also the balancing of like being on the road, just trying to be a human being, and also like writing on a plane, scoring. It was really difficult, but to look back and see that you've left this set of music and recordings on basically how to approach the music. That's a thing we're really proud of.
It's like your children, right? It's the legacy piece, right?
Absolutely, you 100% right. 100%.
Okay, so now tell me about this new exciting chapter of being the professor of horn at Oberlin Conservatory. When did that start?
That was really one of those being in the right place at the right time. Every summer, just about every summer or every other summer, Imani Winds does the festival out in Portland, Chamber Music Northwest, David Schifrin's festival. And this one summer, last summer, we were doing, as part of our mixed ensemble stuff, a grand partita, Mozart. And the principal basset horn player was the principal clarinet is he principal? I'm going to get that wrong. But Richard Hawkins, clarinet player in the Cleveland Orchestra, was sitting in the ensemble. And he kept turning around every once in a while. I was playing fourth horn, but he just kept turning around. Wow, it sounds good back there. It sounds good back there. And that was really it. But about a month later, I get an email from Richard saying, hey, we're doing a search for a new horn player out at Oberlin. You probably don't remember me, but I played basset horn. And I have to admit, it was a weird timing thing for me. I got married in October last year. I took over a sabbatical for a dear friend, Dan Graboy, out in University of Wisconsin in Madison.
I know Dan, of course.
You know Dan. And I was still playing in Imani Winds and still teaching at Montclair and Mannes School of Music. I was doing this. It was insane. And about 3 or 4 weeks after Richard sent me that original email, I had just completely forgotten that he had sent it to me. And he sent me a reminder saying, hey, don't want to nudge you, but I'd ask again. Maybe you might be interested in just sending a CV. I said, of course I am. Right. So I really hunkered down, got my CV in order. I had made a new CV, and I couldn't even tell you. Right. But I got some advice on how to make a really good one, and sent it in. And then about a month later, it was in mid-December, I want to say, I guess they trimmed it down to a number of folks that they were going to invite to come and sort of show their thing. And I went out in early January, did the whole thing of interviews and master classes, a recital, and pinch me, I got it.
Wow, what a great story.
Yeah.
And I love how it all started with a grand partita. You never know where the seeds are going to be planted and what it might possibly lead to.
Playing fourth horn, I'll tell you, if that doesn't tell you that no matter whether you're playing solos or just 5-1 whole notes.
Right, that every partner.
Never know who's listening.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep you for 2 more minutes. I want to talk about the piece of yours that I've been so happy to record for the New Jersey Symphony. Can you tell us a little bit about how you wrote it for the oboist and the quintet, and about what people can listen for?
Absolutely. It was commissioned actually by Toyin Spellman Diaz, the oboe player in Imani Winds. She wanted to have a piece that really featured sort of the different interests that she has. Now, ironically, a lot of people might not know this, but she's a very accomplished singer. And so, and I mean in an operatic sense.
Now, I know that because I've looked at the score and I saw how much vocal writing there was in the slow movement.
Absolutely. She actually was. She was being trained. She like takes lessons. And in any case, so when I wrote the piece, I had that in mind. And whenever I score a piece for, especially a solo piece for someone, I try to get as personal as I can in terms of what they like, what's their strong points are, what makes them really shine. And then really in the case of this piece and the movement that you're playing, I really got personal because the music speaks to her relationship between her and her husband. Her husband, Javier Diaz, follows the Santeria religion. And, I can't really speak to so much the religion itself, but I do know that it's important not only to him, but to his relationship with his wife and his child. And I just thought that there was no better way that I could pay honor to my dear friend Toyin and her husband, but then to write a piece that really celebrated the religion that they share.
Wow. And the piece, for people who haven't heard it yet, it starts out with a minute of flute alone, no piano, very dramatic, bold gestures, extreme dynamic contrasts, and you're setting up all the material with which the movement will be filled. Yep. Then you bring in the piano, and we get groovy, yep. And we get Afro-Cuban fusion groovy.
Yes.
And then you even have it written that Toyin should take a jazz solo, an improv solo, which didn't make a lot of sense for my purposes, so we just made a little cut on that.
And that's really okay. That is a take it or leave it sort of spot in the music.
But I love the way the movement is both impassioned and fiery, but also loose and kind of dancey. A little bit like Leonard Bernstein wandered in somewhere, and a good thing started happening. And then right towards the end,
with Leonard Bernstein, I'll take it and run with it.
Right towards the end, then you segue us into A minor, and we switch, and things get more reflective, only to reemerge to E minor, to our home key, and then have a big powerful finish.
Wow. You're a theorist. You've analyzed the piece. Fantastic.
Well, I loved learning your piece, and I can't wait to share it with audiences far and wide. And it's been a delight to talk to you. And I'm so thrilled that your music gets a new platform through the New Jersey Symphony. And we hope to have you back and hear more about your adventures going forward.
Thank you so much, Bart. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're very, very welcome.